The atmospheric entry into Vera was not a descent. It was a violent, vibrating interrogation by the planet itself. Jace Rourke sat strapped into the crash webbing of the diplomatic courier vessel, his eyes fixed on the view screen. Outside, the hull screamed against the friction of the upper atmosphere, but the turbulence was not merely aerodynamic. They were punching through the Aurora shield, a cascading curtain of hard light energy and ionized particles that served as the primary defense for the Veran capital. Most planetary shields were invisible bubbles of force. Vera's defense was a work of art, a swirling masterpiece of jade and violent violet light that rippled like a disturbed pond. The pilot, a young human lieutenant whose knuckles were white on the yoke, shouted over the roar of the thrusters. "We are clearing the interference layer now, sir. Touchdown at the Imperial Spire in 4 minutes." Jace did not reply immediately. He adjusted the cuff of his dress uniform. It was charcoal gray, unadorned save for a single silver pin on the lapel that marked him as a special envoy. It was a polite fiction. The uniform was too tight across the shoulders, and the fabric felt stiff, a stark contrast to the combat armor he had lived in for the better part of his 20s. 10 years. It had been 10 years since he had breathed the air of this sector. Back then, he had been a captain in the Earth Coalition Expeditionary Force, a man celebrated for impossible extractions and quiet proficiency in dirty wars. Now, the official records listed him as a consultant. In the shadowed corners of intelligence agencies, he was known as a fixer. When a treaty was about to collapse, or a colony governor went rogue, or a Black Ops mission went sideways and needed to be erased from history, they sent Jace. He was the janitor for the Coalition's mistakes. And right now, the biggest potential mistake in the galaxy was waiting on the surface below. The ship broke through the cloud layer, and the capital city of Vera Prime sprawled out beneath them. It was breathtaking. Unlike human cities, which were grids of steel and glass imposing order on the chaotic Earth, the Veran capital was grown. The architecture was biotic, a fusion of crystalline structures and genetically modified coral-like material that reached toward the sky in spiraling organic towers. The buildings pulsed. A faint rhythmic bioluminescence throbbed through the city like a slow heartbeat, synchronized with the planet's magnetic field. Jace felt the familiar tightening in his gut. This was not a diplomatic visit. It was a preemptive strike against chaos. The intelligence briefing he had memorized and subsequently destroyed 3 days ago was concise and terrifying. A galactic peace summit was scheduled to convene in less than a week. The Veran Empire was the keystone. If they signed the new Panstellar Concord, a dozen warring systems would lay down their arms. If they refused, the war would reignite, burning across trade routes that sustained billions of lives. But the chatter intercepted by Earth's listening posts suggested the Queen was compromised. There were whispers of blackmail, of a shadow faction within her own court preparing to force her hand or remove her entirely. They said she would be assassinated before the ink was dry if she tried to maintain her sovereignty. The ship banked hard, aligning with the docking arm of the Imperial Palace. The palace was a mountain of white stone and living glass, suspended over a massive waterfall that fed the city's reservoirs. Jace unbuckled his harness as the landing clamps engaged with a heavy metallic thud. He stood up, feeling the heavier gravity of Vera pull at his joints. He checked his reflection in the dark monitor. His face was older than his 40 years. Lines etched deep around his eyes, his dark hair showing the first threads of iron gray at the temples. He looked like a man who had seen too much and believed too little. He patted the pocket inside his jacket. No weapons. The diplomatic immunity scan would catch even a ceramic blade. He was walking into a nest of vipers with nothing but his wits and a reputation that was half myth, half redacted. The airlock hissed open. The air that rushed in smelled of ozone, crushed flowers, and static electricity. Jace stepped onto the gangway, where a delegation was waiting, or rather one person was waiting, flanked by two towering silent guards in iridescent armor. The figure in the center was tall, thin, and possessed the angular predatory grace common to the Veyran aristocracy. His skin was the color of polished slate, and his eyes were wide, black pools that reflected the light without blinking. The Veyran bowed, a fluid motion that looked more like a wave cresting than a human gesture of respect. "Envoy Rourke," the alien said. The universal translator, clipped to his collar, turned the melodic, clicking Veyran language into a flat, bored human baritone. "I am Tull, High Seneschal to the Inner Chamber. I have been tasked with escorting you to the throne room. Please try to keep up." Jace stepped forward, extending a hand. Tull looked at the hand as if it were a dead fish, then looked back at Jace's face. "We do not touch palms in Vera," Tull said, turning on his heel and walking away at a brisk pace. "It transfers bacteria and creates an unnecessary emotional bridge. Follow." Jace dropped his hand and fell into step beside the alien. As they moved deeper into the palace, the strange nature of the building became oppressive. The walls were not dead matter. They were warm to the touch. Veins of glowing blue fluid pumped through translucent conduits beneath the floor. "This is the lattice," Jace murmured, looking up at the ceiling where intricate neural-like networks pulsed with light. Tull glanced back, surprised. "You have read the briefing pamphlets. How quaint." "Yes, this is the lattice. It is the architectural and computational nervous system of the Empire. It regulates the climate, the defenses, and the historical archives." Jace watched the lights shift from a calm blue to a slightly agitated violet as a group of hurried courtiers passed them. "It does more than that, doesn't it?" Jace asked. "I heard it stores memory. Emotion is data." Tull stopped abruptly, turning to face him. "You listen to rumors," Tull said, his voice sharp. "The lattice remembers the truth of the state. It is the ultimate witness. It ensures that history is preserved exactly as it occurred, free from the failures of organic recollection. Unlike your people who seem to prefer rewriting history to suit your moods." "We call that editing," Jace said dryly. Tull made a clicking sound that the translator interpreted as a scoff. "You humans are endlessly exhausting," Tull said, resuming his rapid pace. "I have spent the last 3 cycles preparing for this summit. Do you know what the most difficult logistical challenge has been?" Jace raised an eyebrow. "The faster-than-light communication protocols?" "Chairs." Tull spat the word out. "Your tragic obsession with chairs. You cannot think unless you are folded in half. You cannot eat unless you are seated. We have had to import 5,000 seating units because your delegation refuses to recline on stabilizing cushions like civilized sapient beings. And the coffee." Tull shuddered, a ripple of motion going down his spine. "Bean sludge," the alien continued. "We have had to synthesize a stimulant that mimics the chemical brutality of your caffeine. It dissolves the cups if left too long. I do not understand how your species survived its own evolution. It was mostly luck and caffeine," Jace admitted. They reached a massive set of double doors made of a material that looked like frozen smoke. The guards stationed there crossed their energy pikes, barring the way. Tull stepped forward and spoke a rapid phrase in High Veyran. The doors groaned, a sound like a cello being bowed by a giant, and began to dissolve, the smoke parting to reveal the cavernous space beyond. The throne room. It was a cathedral of light. The ceiling was a kilometer high, open to the sky but shielded by the lattice fields. Floating platforms hovered in the air, holding members of the court, the purity priesthood in their crimson robes, the lattice custodians with their cybernetic ocular implants, and the nervous-looking members of the treaty bloc. But Jace only saw one thing. At the far end of the hall, upon a raised dais grown from the living floor itself, sat Queen Seralith. If Jace had expected the frightened girl he had once known, that expectation died instantly. Seralith was radiant. She wore a gown of shifting bioluminescent fabric that seemed to change color with her mood. Currently a deep, regal indigo, her silver hair was piled high, woven with conductive filaments that connected her directly to the lattice nodes behind the throne. She was statuesque, terrifying, and devastatingly beautiful. As Jace entered, the room went silent. It was not a polite silence. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of 1,000 predators watching a single prey animal enter the clearing. Tool stopped. You must walk the final distance alone. Envoy. Do not bow until she acknowledges you. Do not speak until spoken to. And for the sake of the stars, do not try to shake her hand. Jace walked. The sound of his boots on the crystalline floor echoed sharply. Every step felt like a transgression. He could feel the weight of eyes on him, the suspicion of the priesthood, the cold calculation of the custodians. He kept his gaze locked on Seralith. She watched him approach with a face like carved marble. Her eyes, which he remembered being a soft, frightened gray, were now like molten starlight, glowing with the power of the empathic network she controlled. He stopped 10 paces from the dais. He waited. Seralith rose. The movement was fluid, powerful. The court held its collective breath. She descended the steps of the dais, the train of her gown flowing behind her like liquid smoke. She stopped directly in front of him, towering over him by half a head in her ceremonial heels. The silence stretched, tight as a bowstring. Then, she leaned in. She violated every protocol of the court, closing the distance until he could smell the scent of her. Ozone and something like night-blooming jasmine. She tilted her head, her glowing eyes searching his face, scanning his micro-expressions, perhaps even sensing the spike in his heart rate through her connection to the room's sensors. Her voice was a whisper, but in the acoustic perfection of the hall, it carried to him with absolute clarity. Human, she said. Do you still remember what you did for me? Jace froze. It was not the question that stunned him. It was the tone. Beneath the regal control, beneath the layers of synthetic authority and royal conditioning, there was a raw, jagged edge of emotion. It was gratitude tangled with hurt. It was desire tangled with wrath. He looked into her eyes, and for a second, the throne room vanished. Flashback. Fire. The smell of burning recycled air and blood. The moon lab was collapsing, the tectonic stabilizers failing under the bombardment. Jace, 10 years younger, covered in soot, holding a thermal rifle that was running on empty. The orders screamed in his earpiece. Leave the assets. Extract immediately. The target is compromised. He looked at the containment cell. The girl inside was huddled in the corner, her eyes wide with terror, the test subject of a war that wasn't hers. If he left her, the automated purge would incinerate the room in 30 seconds. It was a choice between his career and his conscience. He cursed, jammed the override key into the lock, and tore the door open. He grabbed her hand. It was cold. Run, he had told her. Run or we both burn. Back to the present. Jace swallowed the memory. He held her gaze, refusing to flinch. I remember. Majesty, he said softly. I remember every second. Seralith's lips parted slightly, a crack in the porcelain mask. She looked as if she wanted to strike him or embrace him, the conflict playing out in the subtle shift of her biofield, which turned a stormy violet around her shoulders. But before she could speak, the lattice screamed. The ambient hum of the room spiked into a high-pitched shriek. The lights in the ceiling flashed red, and "Get down!" Jace roared, instinct overriding protocol. He lunged forward, tackling the queen of the Veyran Empire. He hit her with the full weight of his body, driving her to the hard floor just as the space where she had been standing dissolved in a distortion of rippling air. Phase shift drones. They appeared out of nowhere, 3 of them, sleek silver spheres that flickered in and out of visual reality. They were assassin tech, illegal in 12 systems, designed to bypass shields by shifting partially into subspace. The court erupted into chaos. Guards shouted, energy pikes charging, but they were too slow. The drones were already acquiring their target on the floor. Jace rolled, placing himself between Sarilith and the attackers. He scrambled for a weapon, but he was unarmed. He grabbed the only thing within reach, a heavy ceremonial staff dropped by a fleeing priest. One of the drones solidified, its emitter glowing hot as it prepared to fire a plasma bolt. Jace swung the staff like a baseball bat. It connected with a crunch of metal and glass, sending the drone spinning into a pillar where it detonated in a shower of sparks. Behind him, Sarilith did not cower. She rose to her knees, her eyes blazing with a terrifying white light. She threw up a hand, and the air in front of her hardened. It was a biopsionic shield, a manifestation of her will amplified by the lattice. The second drone fired. The plasma bolt hit Sarilith's shield and splashed like water against rock. She gritted her teeth, the strain visible in the cords of her neck. "Jace, to the left!" she commanded, her voice amplified by the room's speakers. Jace didn't question her. He dove to the left. The third drone had phased behind them, aiming for the back of her head. Jace threw the remains of the staff at it to distract it, then closed the distance. He grabbed the drone with his bare hands, feeling the freezing cold of the phase shift field burn his palms. He slammed it against the floor, stomping on the delicate anti-grav drive until the machine whined and died. The final drone, the one Sarilith was holding back, suddenly ceased its attack. It hovered for a second, its optical sensors spinning to focus on Sarilith. A synthesized voice, hollow and distorted, spoke from the machine. "Revision of the crown is inevitable." Then it self-destructed. The explosion was contained by Sarilith's shield, but the force of it knocked them both backward. Jace skidded across the floor, his ears ringing. He looked up to see Sarilith lowered her hand, the shield fading. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving, her gown singed at the hem. The royal guard swarmed in a moment later, forming a protective ring around them, weapons drawn, shouting orders that nobody was listening to. Tull was there, helping Sarilith to her feet, checking her for injuries with frantic, clicking sounds. Jace stood up slowly, wiping blood from a cut on his cheek. He looked at the smoking wreckage of the drones. Revision of the crown. Sarilith pushed Tull aside. She smoothed her dress, regaining her composure with a terrifying speed. She looked at the terrified court, at the priesthood who were whispering frantically, at the custodians who were running diagnostics on the security failure. "Silence," she commanded. The room froze again. She turned to the captain of the guard. "Secure the palace. No one leaves. Initiate a level 1 purge of the security protocols." Then she turned to Jace. He was standing amidst the debris, looking like exactly what he was, a soldier who had just ruined a very expensive ceremony. "Envoy Rourke," Sarilith said, her voice cold and projecting to the entire hall. "It appears the diplomatic protocols are insufficient for the current threat level." She stepped closer to him, so close that the guards tensed. You are no longer an envoy, she declared. As of this moment, by the ancient laws of life debt, you are conscripted. You will serve as my external advisor until this threat is neutralized. A gasp went through the room. A human advisor. It was political suicide. It was a direct insult to the priesthood. But Majesty, a priest in red robes stepped forward, his face pale. He is a Terran. He is unclean. To allow him into the inner circle is necessary. Saralith cut him off, her eyes flashing dangerous fire. Unless the priesthood has a better explanation for how assassins bypass the lattice? The priest shut his mouth and stepped back. Saralith looked back at Jace. Her face was a mask of command, but her eyes were pleading. She needed him. She was surrounded by enemies, and for the first time in 10 years, she had found someone who would jump in front of a plasma bolt for her. Attend me in my private sanctum, she ordered. Now. The private sanctum was a stark contrast to the throne room. It was smaller, quieter, filled with the soft light of bioluminescent plants that hung from the ceiling. It smelled of rain. Saralith dismissed her guards and Tull, waiting until the heavy door sealed shut. As soon as they were alone, the regal posture vanished. She slumped slightly, leaning against a table made of dark wood. She looked exhausted. That was reckless, Jace said, breaking the silence. Making me an advisor? You just painted a target on your own back? The priesthood will tear you apart in the press. Saralith laughed, a dry, humorless sound. They were already going to tear me apart. Jace. At least now I have a shield that hits back. She turned to face him. The adrenaline of the fight was fading, replaced by a tension that was thicker, heavier. She walked toward him, stopping just out of arm's reach. Why did you come back? She asked quietly. I was sent, Jace said. It's a job, don't lie to me, she snapped. The lattice connects to my nervous system, Jace. It acts as a polygraph. I can hear your heart rate. I can sense the cortisol in your blood. I can feel that you are afraid, but not of the assassins. She took a step closer. You are afraid of me. Jace held his ground. I'm afraid for you. Saralith. There is a difference, is there? She whispered. She reached out, her fingers hovering inches from his face. She didn't touch him, but he could feel the heat of her hand, the electric hum of the biotech that ran through her veins. 10 years. Jace, I waited 10 years for you to send a message, to acknowledge that I existed. And now you show up 3 days before I am supposed to sign my life away, acting as if we are strangers. I couldn't contact you, Jace said, his voice rough. You're a queen. I'm a ghost. Ghosts don't write letters. Saralith dropped her hand. She looked at him with a mixture of sadness and steel. You are right, she said. You are a ghost, and I am a statue. She turned away, walking to the window that overlooked the glittering alien city. You will stay, she said, her back to him. You will help me find who sent those drones. You will help me survive this summit. But do not make the mistake of thinking we can go back to that moon lab. She turned her head slightly, catching his eye. Desire is a vulnerability in my world. Jace, it is a crack in the armor where the knife goes in. If you look at me with anything other than duty, they will see it, and they will use it to destroy us both. Jace looked at her, the lonely figure against the backdrop of a pulsating, living city. He realized then the magnitude of what she was dealing with. She wasn't just a ruler. She was a node in a massive, uncaring system. She was fighting a war on a battlefield where emotions were weaponized and memories were ammunition. She wasn't just a monarch. She was a battlefield wearing a crown. Understood, Majesty, Jace said. But as he watched her turn back to the window, he knew he was already lying. He had saved her life once because he couldn't bear to let her die. He had a terrible feeling that this time, he would have to do much more than that. He would have to help her live. The clearance level on Jace Rourke's badge was technically non-existent, yet it opened every door in the Imperial Palace. It had been 24 hours since the assassination attempt, and the Varen capital was in a state of suffocating lockdown. The Aurora shield overhead had shifted from a passive jade to an aggressive, burning crimson, casting the entire city in the hue of a developing photograph. Inside the palace, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Jace sat in a makeshift office that had been hastily converted from a storage room for ceremonial robes. The walls were lined with silk and conductive fiber, but Turl had dragged in a desk made of polished bone and a chair that looked suspiciously like a torture device. "This is the most ergonomic seating unit in the sector," Turl insisted, hovering by the door. "It aligns the spine with the magnetic north of the planet. It feels like sitting in a bucket of antlers," Jace muttered, scrolling through the holographic dossiers floating above the desk. "You complain with the frequency of a leaky fusion drive," Tull replied, though he didn't leave. He seemed fascinated by Jace, in the way an entomologist is fascinated by a particularly ugly beetle. Jace ignored him and focused on the data. Seralith had given him access to the Lattice's personnel files, or at least, the layers she could unlock without triggering a civil war. He needed to understand the players on the board before the next assassin took a shot. The court was split into 3 distinct, venomous factions. First, the Treaty Bloc. They were the pragmatists, led by Minister Vane, a slippery bureaucrat whose skin had the oily sheen of an amphibian. They wanted the Panstellar Concord signed at any cost. They viewed Seralith's sovereignty as a quaint relic and were perfectly willing to turn Vera into a vassal state of the galactic economy if it meant keeping the trade lanes open. To them, Jace was a chaotic variable that needed to be subtracted. Second, the Purity Priesthood. These were the Zealots. They wore crimson robes and masks of woven gold, preaching the doctrine of ancestral truth. They believed the Lattice was a holy spirit, not a machine. They hated humans with a religious fervor, viewing Earth as a contagion of chaos. They didn't just want Jace gone, they wanted him ritually cleansed, which usually involved plasma fire. And third, the Lattice custodians. They were the terrifying ones, technocrats who had merged their bodies with the palace mainframe. They had no political agenda, or so they claimed. They existed only to maintain the system. But as Jace read their files, he felt a cold prickle on the back of his neck. They were the ones with the keys to the memory banks. If anyone could edit reality, it was them. Jace swiped the files away. "It is a miracle she has survived this long," he said. "She is surrounded by people who want to sell her, burn her, or reprogram her." "She is the queen," Tull said, his voice losing its usual mockery for a brief second. "She is the anchor of the world. If she breaks, the sky falls. Now, stand up. You must dress." "Dress?" Jace asked. "Dinner," Tull said. "The Feast of Transparency. It is a pre-summit ritual. Attendance is mandatory. And try to wash the smell of cynicism off your skin. It upsets the appetizers." The Feast of Transparency was held in the Obsidian Hall, a chamber where the walls were made of volcanic glass that reflected the diners in endless, distorted echoes. The table was a single slab of floating cryostone, long enough to seat 50 dignitaries. Jace was seated at the far end, rightfully placed in the position of least honor, but ironically directly across from Seralith. She looked ethereal. She wore a gown of severe black, cut with geometric precision. her silver hair pulled back tight. The lattice nodes at her temples pulsed with a soft, rhythmic white light. She did not look at him, but he could feel her attention. It was a physical weight, like gravity shifting in the room. The food was brought out by silent servers. It was a parade of glowing jellies, vibrating meats, and soups that steamed with vapors that formed complex shapes before dissipating. Minister Vane, the leader of the treaty bloc, raised a glass of viscous blue liquid. "To the Concord," Vane said, his voice smooth as grease, "and to Her Majesty's wisdom in accepting the inevitable peace." Sarilith raised her glass but did not drink. Jace stared at the bowl in front of him. It contained a broth that swirled with golden distinct flecks. "Do not eat too quickly," Tull whispered, leaning in from behind Jace's chair. "This is a reactive banquet. The ingredients are harvested from the truth fields of the southern continent. They contain psychotropic enzymes that react to the diner's galvanic skin response and pheromones." "Meaning what?" Jace whispered back. "Meaning if you speak a lie while eating, the food will taste like rotting sulfur," Tull said with a sadistic grin. "It is considered a grave insult to vomit at the royal table. Good luck." "Human." The conversation started with the usual diplomatic pleasantries, but soon, the eyes of the table turned to Jace, the Purity Priesthood's High Vicar, a man whose face was hidden behind a golden mask. Spoke first. "Tell us, Envoy Rourke," the vicar rasped, "is it true that on Earth, you consume the flesh of animals that you have personally named?" The table went quiet. It was a trap. Jace picked up his spoon. He took a sip of the broth. It tasted like savory mushrooms in sunlight. "We eat what we have to," Jace said. "And sometimes we name things so we remember the cost of survival." He took another sip. The taste remained sweet. A murmur went through the room. He hadn't lied. Minister Vane leaned forward. "And what of your presence here? You claim to be an advisor, yet your history is one of violence. Do you truly believe you can aid a peace summit? Or are you simply here to ensure the weapons are sold to the right side?" Jace felt the eyes of the custodians on him. They were watching his biometrics. "I am here because I was ordered to be," Jace said. "I don't care about your summit and I don't care about your trade routes. I am here because 10 years ago I saw something worth saving. And I have a bad habit of leaving jobs unfinished." He ate a piece of the vibrating meat. It tasted like spicy chicken. "The truth." Sarilith finally spoke. Her voice cut through the room, silencing the clinking of silverware. "And what did you see?" "Jace?" she asked. It was not a formal question. It was personal. She was testing the food, testing him, testing the room. Jace looked at her. He saw the queen, but he also saw the woman beneath, the one who was terrified that he was just another player in the game. "I saw a leader who didn't need an army to command respect," Jace said. "And I saw a woman who was too stubborn to die." He swallowed. The flavor exploded in his mouth. Rich, complex, perfect. Sarilith stared at him. The nodes at her temples flared brighter for a microsecond. She felt the truth of it. She could feel the sincerity radiating off him like heat. A flush of color rose to her pale cheeks, a very human reaction that she quickly suppressed. The High Vicar slammed his hand on the table. "This is a mockery," he shouted. "He speaks in riddles to bypass the enzymes." A human cannot possess such clarity. They are creatures of deceit. "Actually," Jace said, putting down his spoon, "I just have a very low tolerance for politics. It makes the lying unnecessary." A ripple of laughter came from the end of the table. Tull, unable to help himself. The tension broke, but the danger remained. Jace caught the look in the eyes of the custodians. They weren't amused. They were calculating. Later that night, Jace sat in his quarters, the taste of the truth broth still lingering on his tongue. He couldn't sleep. The adrenaline of the dinner had faded, replaced by a gnawing suspicion. He pulled a device from his pocket. It was a piece of debris he had scavenged from the destroyed assassin drone, a memory core. He had managed to interface it with his datapad, bypassing the palace security protocols. He wanted to know who built it. But as he scrubbed through the code, he found something else. It wasn't just a targeting system, and it was a broadcast unit. The drone had been transmitting data during the attack. Not video, but neural telemetry. It had been trying to sync with Seralith's connection to the lattice. Jace frowned. He expanded the data stream. The code looked familiar. It used a specific encryption algorithm, a recursive fractal pattern. He had seen this before. He pulled up his own service record, the classified file he kept encrypted on his personal drive. He opened the log for the Moon Lab extraction, the event 10 years ago where he had saved Seralith. He compared the code. They were identical. The tech inside the assassin drone used the same architecture as the neural recorder in his own coalition helmet from a decade ago. Jace sat back, the room suddenly feeling very cold. He touched the back of his head, where the standard-issue neural interface jack sat behind his ear. Every soldier had one. It recorded mission data for debriefing. He typed a command into the terminal, scan local neural history. Subject, Jace Rourke, cross-reference with external timeline. The computer whirred, a progress bar filled with agonizing slowness. Mismatch detected. The words flashed in red. Jace stared at the screen. He opened the detailed report. According to his memory, the memory he saw every time he closed his eyes, he had breached the containment cell, fought off 2 guards, grabbed Seralith, and run down the corridor to the shuttle. It was a continuous, frantic sequence, but the timestamp analysis showed a gap. There were 3 minutes missing, between the moment he breached the door and the moment they entered the corridor. 3 minutes of his neural log had been excised and stitched back together with a clumsy patch. He hadn't fought 2 guards. The ballistics report from the old mission file showed 4 enemy bodies in that room. Who killed the other 2? And why couldn't he remember it? He zoomed in on the code structure of the patch. It wasn't coalition work. It was far too advanced. It was organic, fluid code. It was Varen technology, memory lace. Someone had edited his mind. They had gone into his head 10 years ago and cut out 3 minutes of reality, smoothing over the edges so he would never know. Jace stood up, knocking his chair over. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in. He wasn't just a spy. He was a crime scene. He needed to talk to her. The royal gardens were located on the roof of the highest spire, enclosed in a bubble of atmosphere that held back the vacuum of space. It was night, and the galaxy sprawled overhead in a terrifying glory of diamond dust and void. The garden itself was a miracle of gravity manipulation. Islands of soil floated in the air, connected by bridges of woven vines, bioluminescent flowers, large as dinner plates, orbited the floating islands like slow moons, casting a soft blue dreamlight over everything. Jace found Seralith standing on the edge of the central platform, looking out at the stars. She had changed out of the severe black gown into something softer, a robe of white silk that floated around her in the artificial breeze. She didn't turn around when he approached. "You are loud, Jace," she said softly. "Your mind is shouting." "I know about the memory lace," he said. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. Seralith went still. The floating flowers around her seemed to dim in response to her sudden tension. She turned slowly. Her face was unguarded, stripped of the royal mask. "You found it," she said. "You knew?" Jace asked, stepping closer. You knew my head had been tampered with? I suspected, she replied. The official history says you were a lone hero. My own memory is fragmented. The lattice holds the truth, but the files from that day are sealed by the custodians. High-level corruption? When you arrived, I felt the dissonance in you. You remember a story that fits too neatly. She walked toward him, her bare feet making no sound on the mossy grass. It is a terrifying thing, isn't it? To realize that the sanctity of your own mind is just another border that can be crossed. Who did it? Jace demanded. Was it the custodians? Saralith stopped a foot away from him. The air between them hummed with the energy of the garden and the raw electricity of her presence. I don't know, she admitted. But whoever did it wanted us both alive. They wanted you to be a hero, and me to be a survivor. They crafted a narrative that would let us walk away. And what really happened in those 3 minutes? Jace asked. Saralith looked up at him. Her eyes were wide, swirling with that molten starlight. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and placed her palm against his chest, right over his heart. He gasped. The contact was electric. He could feel her empathy flooding into him, not an invasion, but a resonance. She wasn't reading his mind. She was feeling his heartbeat as if it were her own. I think, she whispered, her voice hitching. I think we did something terrible. Jace looked down at her. He saw the fear in her eyes, but beneath it he saw the hunger, the longing that she had buried under 10 years of protocol and armor. And he felt his own walls crumbling. He wasn't the cynical fixer anymore. He was the man who had run through fire for her. He covered her hand with his own. I don't care what we did, he said, his voice rough. I'd do it again. Saralith let out a shuddering breath. The connection between them spiked. The empathic feedback loop intensified. His desire feeding hers, her loneliness feeding his. You shouldn't say that, she murmured, leaning in. You don't know the cost. I know the value, Jace said. He lowered his head. She tilted hers up. The galaxy overhead seemed to spin around them. The scent of the night-blooming flowers was intoxicating. A throne doesn't make you powerful, Saralith whispered, her lips inches from his. It makes you public property. I have belonged to everyone but myself for a decade. Then belong to yourself for a minute. Jace breathed. He closed the gap. Their breath mingled. The electricity arced. Envoy Rourke, the council is, by the 17 hells. The voice shattered the moment like a hammer hitting glass. Jace and Saralith sprang apart. Turl stood at the entrance to the garden bridge, his hand over his eyes, looking thoroughly disgusted. I warned you, Turl shouted, marching forward. I specifically warned you about bodily fluids and emotional bridges. And here you are, attempting to merge nervous systems in the rhododendrons. Saralith straightened, her face flushing a deep violet, but she regained her queenly posture in an instant. Turl, she said, her voice dropping 20 degrees. You are interrupting. I am saving your reign, Turl retorted, waving his long arms. The treaty bloc has called an emergency session. They are demanding Rourke's head on a platter. They say he is manipulating you with human pheromones. Which, looking at this display, is a theory I am unfortunately beginning to find credible. Jace ran a hand through his hair, his heart still hammering against his ribs. They're moving early, he said, the soldier in him taking over the lover. They weren't supposed to strike until the summit. They are scared, Turl said. The dinner performance rattled them. They want you gone tonight. Saralith's eyes hardened. The vulnerability was gone, locked away behind the walls of the monarch. Let them come, she said, cold as ice. The council chamber was a circular arena. The treaty block sat on one side, the priesthood on the other, and the custodians watched from the shadows of the upper tier. Jace stood in the center, Sarilith on the throne above him. Minister Vane was red in the face, pointing a shaking finger at Jace. "He is a destabilizing agent," Vane shouted. "We have reports that he is accessing restricted archives. He is digging into the past to find leverage. We cannot sign a peace treaty with a spy whispering in the Queen's ear." The High Vicar of the priesthood nodded. "The human is a contaminant. His presence invalidates the purity of the ritual." Sarilith stood up. The room quieted, but the hostility remained. "You speak of stability," Sarilith said, her voice amplified by the lattice. "Yet you would sign away our independence for a trade agreement. You speak of purity, yet you let assassins into my home." She walked down the steps, standing beside Jace. She didn't look at him, but she stood close enough that their shadows merged on the floor. "Jace Rourke is not here as a spy," she declared. "He is here because he is the only person in this room who has proven he values my life over his own ambition." She looked at the assembly, her gaze sweeping over them like a searchlight. "If you want him removed, you will have to remove me first." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a gamble of massive proportions. She had just tied her crown to a disgraced human soldier. Minister Vane looked like he had swallowed a lemon. The vicar looked furious, but they backed down. They weren't ready for a coup. Not yet. "So be it," Vane hissed, "but be warned, Majesty. The summit begins in 2 days. If this human causes one diplomatic incident, the treaty bloc will invoke the vote of no confidence." "We understand," Sarilith said. Dismissed. The hall emptied. Sarilith didn't stay to talk. She gave Jace a single, unreadable look and swept out with her guards. She had defended him, but the intimacy of the garden was gone, replaced by the cold reality of survival. Jace walked back toward his quarters, his mind racing. He had bought them time, but not much. He turned a corner into the dimly lit corridor that led to his room. Step into the shadow. "Envoy." The voice was synthesized, buzzing like a broken speaker. Jace spun around, back against the wall, fists raised. A figure emerged from an alcove. It was a custodian. The creature was tall, draped in heavy gray robes. Half of its face was flesh. The other half was a complex array of lenses and sensors. Tubes ran from its skull into a bulky pack on its back. "I am not here to fight," the custodian said. Its single human eye looked tired, its mechanical eye whirred, focusing on Jace. "Then what do you want?" Jace asked. "There is a fracture in the custodian council," the machine man whispered. "Some of us believe that the editing has gone too far. History is not a painting to be retouched. It is a foundation. If you chip away at it too much, the house falls." The custodian reached into its robe. It produced a small, crystalline data shard. It glowed with a dangerous red light. "What is that?" Jace asked. "The truth," the custodian said. "You were looking for the missing 3 minutes. The file you found was corrupted. This is the source." The custodian held it out. The file name scrolled across the surface of the crystal in holographic text. "The rescue event. Original cut." "Take it," the custodian urged. "But be careful. The truth is a virus. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it, and it may destroy the image of the queen you hold so dear." Jace hesitated for only a second. He reached out and took the shard. It was warm. "Why give this to me?" Jace asked. "Because," the custodian said, stepping back into the shadows, "we calculate a 99% probability that you are the only one stupid enough to use it." The custodian vanished into the dark, leaving Jace standing alone in the corridor, holding the missing 3 minutes of his life in the palm of his hand. The room was dark, save for the blood-red glow of the holographic projection hovering above Jace's desk. Jace Rourke sat motionless, the crystal shard given to him by the renegade custodian humming in the interface slot. He was watching the worst 3 minutes of his life, but this time, the camera angle was different. This time, there were no edits. The footage showed the Moon Lab 10 years ago. It showed Jace kicking down the door, wild-eyed and desperate. But it also showed what the official records had scrubbed away. Sarilith was not cowering in a corner. She was strapped to a chair made of conductive copper, cables drilled directly into her spine. She was screaming. The rival faction holding her, a group of separatists long since dissolved, wasn't just holding her for ransom. They were using her neural link to power a weapon targeting system. On the screen, Jace saw his younger self tear the cables loose. Sparks showered the room. He grabbed Sarilith, who was convulsing. Then came the audio that had been deleted from his memory, a separatist commander's voice blaring over the intercom. If the asset is removed, initiate the Scorch Protocol. Target the civilian habitats. Burn it all. On the screen, younger Jace paused. He heard the threat. He looked at the girl in his arms, then at the tactical map on the wall showing the nearby colony of unsuspecting miners. He had a choice. Stay and try to disarm the bomb, leaving Sarilith to die, or run with the girl and let the colony burn. The Jace on the screen didn't hesitate. He ran. The footage cut to an external view. As Jace's shuttle blasted away from the moon, a bloom of silent white fire erupted on the surface below. The mining colony. 12,000 people. Vaporized in an instant because Jace Rourke decided one Varen princess was worth more than a city. The projection flickered and died. Jace sat in the dark, the silence of the room roaring in his ears. He felt sick. The memory lace hadn't just hidden a gap in time, it had hidden his guilt. He wasn't a hero. He was the executioner of 12,000 ghosts. The door to his quarters hissed open. Jace didn't turn around. "Get out, tell." "It is not the stick insect," a voice said. Jace spun around. Sarilith stood there. She was wrapped in a heavy cloak, her face pale, her eyes burning with a feverish intensity. She held a data pad in her hand. "Have you seen it?" she asked. Her voice was brittle, like thin glass. Jace nodded slowly. He stood up, feeling heavy. "I killed them," he said. "I chose you. And they died." Sarilith walked into the room, the door sealing behind her. She dropped the data pad on the desk next to the red crystal. "We both killed them," she said fiercely. "I was the trigger. You were the hand. The custodians erased it to protect the monarchy, to keep the populace from knowing their queen is built on a foundation of ash." She tapped the data pad she had brought. "But the priesthood has found another angle. Look." Jace looked at the screen. It was a propaganda feed, broadcasting on all public channels. It showed grainy, manipulated footage of Jace touching Sarilith's arm during the drone attack, looped and distorted to look possessive, predatory. The headlines screamed in jagged Varen script, "The Tainted Crown. Has the Queen been compromised by human touch?" "They are calling for a purification," Sarilith said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "They claim I have been infected by your biology, that my decisions are no longer my own. If we stay here, the treaty bloc will force me to abdicate before the summit to avoid a civil war." "So we fight," Jace said, the soldier in him waking up despite the guilt. "No," Sarilith said, "we cannot fight a war of rumors with weapons, and we need proof. The crystal you found is digital. The custodians can claim it is a forgery." The priesthood will say it is a human trick. She looked him in the eye. There is a physical backup, the Treaty of Oru. It was signed 20 years ago on a neutral station. It contains the unalterable genetic logs of the royal line, and more importantly, a hard copy surveillance cache of the sector, including the Moon Lab. It is analog. It cannot be hacked. It cannot be edited. Where is it? Jace asked. Station 9, she said. It is a derelict platform in the drift. It has been abandoned since the war. Abandoned means dangerous. Jace noted. Saralith pulled a small silver drive from her cloak. I have prepped a stealth shuttle. Tull is creating a diversion with the kitchen staff. Something involving an exploding tureen of soup and a diplomatic incident with the Andromedan ambassador. We have 6 hours before they realize we are gone. She paused, her gaze softening as she looked at his face, seeing the horror of the file still etched there. Jace, she whispered, we can drown in the guilt later. Right now, I need you to drive. Station 9 was a graveyard of metal and silence. It hung in the void of the drift, a massive spinning wheel of rusted hull plating and shattered viewports. The stealth shuttle, piloted by Jace's steady hands, slipped through a hole in the defense grid and latched onto a manual airlock with a metallic clang that reverberated through the hull. Jace checked the atmospheric sensors. Air is breathable, but thin, he said, popping the seal. Gravity is unstable. The station's core is flickering. Expect shifts between 0G and double weight. Saralith stood up, shedding her heavy cloak to reveal a tactical flight suit that hugged her frame. It was a jarring sight. The Queen of Vera dressed for a commando raid. She checked the charge on a small energy pistol. I hate this place, she muttered. It smells of old ozone and dead ambition. Jace grabbed a kinetic rifle from the locker. It beats the smell of politics. They moved into the station. The corridors were dimly lit by emergency strobes that flashed yellow every 4 seconds. Flash. Darkness. Flash. Darkness. The gravity was nauseating. One moment, they were walking heavily, boots clanging on the deck. The next, the floor dropped away, and they were floating, drifting past floating debris, coffee cups left 20 years ago, data pads, a floating boot. Watch your head, Jace warned, grabbing Saralith's belt and pulling her down as they drifted through a blast door. I am perfectly capable of navigating zero gravity, Saralith snapped, though her hand lingered on his arm. I underwent orbital training at the academy. Right, Jace grinned, pushing off a bulkhead to propel them forward. I forgot about the posh 0G ballet classes. It was combat maneuvering, she retorted. But there was a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. The banter was a shield. They were both terrified, not of the station, but of the silence between them, the weight of the file they had watched. They reached the central atrium, a massive open space that spanned 5 decks. In the center, a holographic fountain was still trying to run, sputtering static water into the air. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the chamber, a metallic screech. Jace froze, raising his fist. Saralith stopped mid-air, grabbing a railing. Movement at 2 o'clock, Jace whispered. From the shadows emerged a shape. It looked like a soldier, but it was translucent, glowing with a pale blue light. It wore the armor of a long-dead faction. It raised a rifle. War ghosts. Saralith breathed. The station's security AI had degraded. It was projecting hard-light holograms of the soldiers who had once guarded it, stuck in a loop of a battle that ended decades ago. But hard light could still burn. The ghost fired. A bolt of coherent light sizzled past Jace's ear, scorching the wall. Move! Jace shouted. He fired back, his kinetic rounds passing harmlessly through the hologram. You have to hit the emitters, Jace yelled, pointing to the small projectors lining the walls. Sarilith didn't shoot. She closed her eyes. The nodes at her temples flared white. She reached out with her mind, connecting to the station's dying network. I see them, she gasped. She thrust her hand forward. A pulse of telekinetic force slammed into the wall, shattering 3 emitters in a shower of sparks. The ghost soldier flickered and vanished, but more were coming. A squad of them materialized on the upper walkway, looking down at them with faceless helmets. "Run!" Sarilith commanded. They sprinted, or rather, bounded across the atrium. The gravity shifted again, slamming them into the floor. They scrambled on hands and knees as plasma fire rained down, scorching the deck plates. Into the lift. Jace grabbed her, throwing her into an open elevator shaft. They tumbled into the dark, just as the gravity cut out completely. They floated in the pitch black of the shaft, the sounds of battle above them muffled. "Are you hit?" Jace asked, his voice echoing. "No." Sarilith's voice came from the dark, just dizzy. He fumbled for a glow rod, cracking it. The green chemical light flooded the small space. Sarilith was floating upside down relative to him, her hair fanning out like a silver halo. She looked wild, beautiful, and utterly exhausted. "We need to get to the archives on the lower deck," Jace said, checking his wrist comp. "We need a minute," Sarilith said. "Please, just a minute." She drifted toward the wall, anchoring herself. Jace pushed himself over to her. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the raw, jagged nerves. "You did good back there," Jace said softly. "For someone who took ballet classes." Sarilith let out a laugh that sounded half like a sob. "I am tired, Jace," she whispered. "I am so tired of being strong. I am tired of the masks. I am tired of the lies." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face in the green light. "Do you know what I saw when I looked at the file?" she asked. "I know what you saw," Jace said. "You saw a monster." "No," she said. She reached out, grabbing the lapels of his jacket, pulling him close, because of the 0G. Her pull brought their bodies together, colliding softly in the void. "I saw a man who broke the world to save me," she said, fierce and low. "And God help me. I didn't care about the world. I only cared that you came back." Jace stared at her. The distance between them was gone. "You shouldn't say that," he said hoarsely. "You're the queen. You have to care about the world." "I am a woman," she cried out, the control finally snapping. "I am a woman who has spent 10 years being a symbol, a statue, a prize to be won or a resource to be spent. I have dreamed of this. Jace, I have dreamed of you." She tightened her grip on his jacket, shaking him slightly. "I have dreamed of having you close enough to punish you for leaving me," she hissed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And close enough to cherish you for saving me. I hate that I need you. I hate that when I close my eyes, I don't see the throne. I see your face in the firelight of that lab." Jace felt his own control shatter. The wall he had built around his heart, the wall of duty, of rank, of guilt, turned to dust. "I never left," he said, his voice cracking. "Every night for 10 years, I've been back in that room. I can still feel your breath against my neck when I carried you out. I can still smell the smoke in your hair." He wrapped his arms around her waist, anchoring them together in the drifting dark. "I tried to forget you, Sarilith. I tried to drink it away, fight it away, but you are burned into me." Sarilith let out a small, broken sound. She buried her face in his neck, right where the pulse hammered against the skin. "Then stop fighting," she whispered against his skin. "Just for tonight. Let the galaxy burn. I don't care. Be here. Be mine." Jace pulled back enough to look at her. Her eyes were wet, her lips parted. The hunger in her face was naked, terrifying, and undeniable. He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision of 10 years of silence, 10 years of fear. It was desperate and angry and overwhelmingly tender. They floated in the center of the shaft, wrapped in each other, spinning slowly in the green light. The cold of the station vanished, replaced by the heat of their bodies. Hands that had held weapons moments ago now traced the lines of faces, memorizing the reality of skin and bone. Sarilith pulled him deeper, her touch frantic, as if she needed to prove he was real. Jace held her as if she were the only solid thing in a universe that was falling apart. There was no royalty here, no envoy and queen, just a man and a woman in the dark, trying to outrun their ghosts. They drifted to the side of the shaft, finding purchase on a maintenance ledge. They huddled together, wrapped in each other's arms, the silence of the station pressing in. Jace held her as she shook, the tears finally coming. He kissed the salt from her cheeks, murmuring things that would have been treason in the capital but were gospel here in the dark. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you." Sarilith clung to him, her fingers digging into his back. She kissed his jaw, his throat, the scar above his eye. She was unmaking him and rebuilding him all at once. Later, as the storm of emotion settled into a quiet, heavy warmth, they lay tangled together on the narrow ledge. Sarilith's head resting on Jace's chest. "You know what this means," she said softly, her finger tracing the line of his collarbone. "I know," Jace said. "No," she said, looking up at him. Her eyes were clear now, the molten starlight calm but hard. "If you love me, Jace, you are declaring war. The priesthood, the treaty block, even the lattice. They will try to destroy you to get to me. Loving a queen is not a fairy tale. It is a siege. I've been under siege my whole life," Jace said, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. "At least this time, I know what I'm fighting for." Sarilith smiled. "A sad, beautiful thing. Then we fight," she said. "But first, we finish the mission." They found the archive vault 2 hours later. It was located in the station's command center, a room encased in blast-proof glass that looked out over the swirling nebula of the drift. The vault itself was an analog safe, a heavy titanium box bolted to the floor. "This is it," Sarilith said, kneeling before it. She pulled a set of physical lockpicks from her belt, another surprise from her academy days. Jace stood guard at the door, rifle raised. The station was quiet now. The ghosts seemed to have retreated. "Got it," Sarilith said. The safe clicked open. Inside lay a single, heavy book bound in synthetic leather and a set of reel-to-reel data tapes. "The Treaty of Oru," she said, lifting the book, "and the surveillance reels." She opened the book. Her eyes scanned the pages. "Here," she said, pointing, "the Sovereignty Clause. It states clearly that the Veyran crown cannot be forced into a treaty under duress. And here, the genetic logs. Proof that my lineage is pure, contradicting the priesthood's lies about human taint." She grabbed the tapes, "And this will show the truth of the lab, the separatists, the weapon. We have what we need," Jace said. "Let's go." Sarilith placed the items into a satchel. She stood up. "Wait," she said. She looked at the empty safe. There was a small light blinking at the back of the casing, a red light. Jace saw it at the same time. "Trap!" he yelled. He dove for her, tackling her away from the safe just as a high-pitched whine filled the room. It wasn't an explosive. It was a transmitter. The safe had been rigged. The moment the contents were removed, a signal was beamed out. A massive holographic display in the center of the command room flickered to life. It showed a news feed from the Veyran capital. It was live. A news anchor with the priesthood's emblem on his collar was speaking. his voice booming through the station's speakers. Breaking news. The location of the fugitive queen has been confirmed. A tracking beacon, dormant for 20 years in the Oru archives, has been triggered. The image on the screen shifted. It showed a grainy, long-range scan of the station they were currently in. And we have confirmation. The anchor continued, his voice dripping with false sorrow. The queen is not alone. She is accompanied by the human mercenary, Jace Rourke. The screen split. On one side, Saralith's official portrait. On the other, Jace's mugshot from his military days. Sources close to the crown confirm that the queen has fled to engage in an illicit liaison with the human. We have intercepted audio fragments. Jace's blood ran cold. The transmitter hadn't just pinged their location. It had been recording. A snippet of audio played. It was from the elevator shaft. Saralith's voice. I have dreamed of having you close enough to punish you to be mine. It was out of context. It sounded desperate, carnal, and damning. The anchor shook his head. A scandalous betrayal of tradition. The queen has taken a human lover to undermine the sacred laws of our ancestors. The priesthood calls for immediate emergency powers to preserve the dignity of the empire. Saralith stared at the screen, her face draining of color. They didn't want the archive, she whispered. They wanted us to come get it. They wanted the headline. She looked at Jace. The intimacy of the last few hours felt suddenly exposed, violated. They had walked right into the guillotine. Jace stood up, pulling her to her feet. The shame tried to take hold, but he shoved it down. They want a scandal? He said, his voice hard as iron. Fine. Let's give them a revolution instead. He grabbed the satchel with the evidence. We have the truth. Saralith, they have a soundbite. We get back to the ship. We get back to the capital. And we jam this truth down their throats before they can blink. Saralith looked at the screen, then at Jace. The fear in her eyes hardened into a diamond-sharp resolve. You are right, she said. If they want to make me a sinner, I will show them what a sinner can do with a fleet. Run, Jace said. They ran. Behind them, the newsfeed continued to loop, the lie traveling faster than light, spreading across the galaxy that the Queen of Vera had fallen. But in the satchel bouncing against Saralith's hip was the only thing that could save her, or destroy everything they had left. The truth. The return to the Veran capital was not a homecoming. It was an entry into a shark tank where the water was already boiling with blood. The stealth shuttle slipped through the chaos of the upper atmosphere, bypassing the commercial lanes that were choked with protest ships. Below, the city was a tapestry of unrest. The usually serene bioluminescence of the architecture was erratic, flashing in jagged patterns of warning red and panic yellow. The news of the scandal, the queen and her human lover, the traitor and the spy, had done its work. Jace Rourke sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the feeds scrolling on the dashboard. It was ugly. The treaty bloc was demanding immediate abdication to preserve the integrity of the upcoming peace summit. They argued that a compromised monarch could not sign a panstellar treaty. The purity priesthood was worse. They were calling for a purification tribunal, which Jace knew was a polite euphemism for a public execution disguised as a religious ceremony. Saralith sat in the back, staring at the satchel containing the Treaty of Oru and the analog reels. She had not spoken since they broke orbit from the derelict station. She looked like a statue carved from ice, beautiful and brittle. We land at the private hangar, Jace said, breaking the silence. Tull has a security detail waiting. Saralith nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the middle distance. They will not listen to the tapes. Jace, she said softly. Her voice was flat. The priesthood controls the narrative. If I play the recordings, they will claim they are forgeries. If I show the treaty, they will say I have misinterpreted the ancient script. They have already decided I am guilty. The trial is just a formality to verify the sentence. Then we change the venue, Jace said, banking the ship toward the palace spires. We don't play by their rules. Sarilith looked at him then. A spark of the fierce woman he had held in the dark of the station flared to life. You are right, she said. We do not play. We ascend. The throne room was packed. It smelled of fear and ozone. Every faction was present. The treaty block members stood in a huddled mass of gray suits, whispering conspiratorially. The priesthood formed a crimson phalanx near the dais, their golden masks gleaming under the lights. The lattice custodians hovered in the shadows, their cybernetic eyes recording every micro-expression. When Sarilith entered, flanking Jace, the noise in the room rose to a roar. Shame, cried a priest. Abdicate, shouted a senator. Sarilith did not stop. She walked with a predator's grace, her head high, the nodes at her temples pulsing with a dangerous white light. Jace walked a half-step behind her, his hand resting near the hidden holster of his kinetic pistol. He scanned the room, marking targets. She ascended the dais and turned to face them. She did not shout. She simply amplified her voice through the room's acoustics using the lattice connection. Silence. The word hit the room like a physical blow. The shouting died down, replaced by a sullen, murmuring tension. The High Vicar of the priesthood stepped forward. You have desecrated the crown. Sarilith, he spat. You have fled with a human. You have brought shame upon the ancestors. The tribunal demands your surrender. Sarilith looked at him with cold amusement. The tribunal demands? She asked. Since when does the servant demand of the master? Since the master lost her mind to a human bedding warmer, the vicar retorted. The crowd gasped. It was a crude insult, unworthy of the court. Jace tensed, but Sarilith placed a hand on his arm, restraining him. I invoke the right of resonance, she declared. The room went dead silent. Even the air recyclers seemed to pause. Minister Vane of the treaty block stepped forward, his face pale. Majesty, that is, archaic. The rite has not been performed in 300 years. Because no ruler has dared to face it, Sarilith said. The right of resonance is the ultimate sovereignty trial. I will interface directly with the core of the lattice. I will project my memories, my emotions, and my truth onto the waking world. If I lie, the lattice will burn me from the inside out. If I am impure, the feedback loop will stop my heart. She looked at the vicar. You want truth, vicar? You want to know what happened in that moon lab 10 years ago? You want to know the nature of my relationship with Envoy Rourke? She swept her gaze across the room. I will show you, not on a screen, not on a tape. I will put it into your heads. I will let the lattice judge me, and if I survive, my word is law. The vicar looked terrified. He knew, as everyone did, that the lattice could not be bribed or bullied. It was the collective consciousness of the planet. And if you die? The vicar asked, hope creeping into his voice. Then you get your purification, Sarilith said, and the empire is yours to ruin. An hour later, Jace was pacing in the ready room while Tull hovered around him like a nervous moth. She is going to die, Jace said, running a hand through his hair. I looked up the right. The neural load is lethal. It requires total synchronization with a planetary AI. The human brain, even a Varen brain, isn't built for that kind of voltage. She is the queen, Tull said, though his usual snark was entirely absent. His large black eyes were wide with worry. Her nervous system is reinforced with conductive filaments. She has a 40% chance of survival. 40%? Jay shouted. That is not a plan. Turl, that is a suicide note. It is the only way, Turl said, snapping his mandibles. If she does not do this, the treaty block forces her out by sunset. The right buys us time. It forces the priesthood to wait. Jace slammed his hand against the wall. She's doing this to protect me, isn't she? To prove I didn't corrupt her. She is doing this to protect the truth, Tull corrected. And yes, because she is irrationally fond of your primitive species. Which brings us to the matter of your role. My role? Jace asked. You are her second, Tull explained. In the ancient rites, the claimant must have a second to anchor them. Someone to pull them back if they drift too deep into the data stream. You must stand beside her, and you must speak the ceremonial invocations. I don't speak High Varen, Jace said. I know, Tull sighed, producing a data pad. That is why I have spent the last 20 minutes preparing a phonetic cheat sheet. You must memorize these phrases exactly. One mispronunciation could be catastrophic. Tull pointed to the first phrase. Say this, Claveran thal orus. It means I stand as witness to the soul. Jace squinted at the screen. Claveran thal orus. Acceptable. Tull grunted. Now this one. Soruka valesh. It means the truth is a blade. Soruka valish. Jace tried. No! Tull shrieked. Lesh, not lish. You just said the truth is a fermented fish sausage. Does it matter? Jace asked. It matters if you do not want to insult the ancestors of the royal house while your lover is convulsing in a neural storm. Tull snapped. Context is everything. Human. We are trying to stop a coup, not order lunch. Jace took a deep breath. Fine. Soruka valesh. Better, Tull muttered. But try to sound less like you are gargling rocks. The accent requires a certain elegance. Imagine you are a being of culture, rather than a hairless ape who solves problems with explosions. I'll do my best, Jace said dryly. While Tull continued his linguistic torture, a message chimed on Jace's personal comms. It was a secure frequency. Meet me in the archive sub-level, alone. It was unsigned, but the encryption key belonged to the custodians. Jace looked at Tull. I need 5 minutes. You need 5 years of elocution lessons, Tull replied. But go. Do not be late for the rite. Jace slipped out of the room and descended into the bowels of the palace. The archive sub-level was a maze of cooling pipes and humming server banks. The air was cold and smelled of static. Waiting for him in the shadows of a server rack was the custodian who had given him the crystal file. But as Jace approached, he realized this wasn't a low-level defector. This custodian wore the obsidian robes of the High Council. I am Kalen, the machine man said. His voice was a harmonious blend of organic vocal cords and synthesized tones. Primary overseer of the lattice. You're the one pulling the strings, Jace said, his hand drifting to his gun. You edited the memories. I curated them, Kalen corrected calmly. Stability requires a coherent narrative. The Queen's trauma was inconvenient. Your heroism was a useful myth, but the messy reality of the collateral damage needed to be smoothed over. Why give me the file then? Jace asked. Why let me find out? Because the priesthood is becoming a problem, Kalen said. They are chaotic. They want to burn the system down to purify it. We custodians believe in order. The Queen is erratic, but she is part of the system. The priesthood must be checked. Kalen stepped closer, the lenses on his face whirred. I have a proposition. Envoy Rourke. I'm listening, Jace said. The right of resonance will kill her, Kalen said matter-of-factly. Her biological stress levels are already critical. When she connects to the core, the feedback from the scandal, the millions of minds judging her, will overload her synapses. She will burn. Jace felt a cold knot in his stomach. He knew it. However, Kaylin continued, I can dampen the feed. I can filter the input. I can ensure she survives the trial with her mind intact. What's the price? Jace asked. You, Kaylin said. Jace narrowed his eyes. Explain. You are the variable that introduces chaos, Kaylin said. You make her emotional. You make her reckless. You make her prioritize a single life over the good of the millions. That is a flaw in a ruler. Kaylin held out a hand. I will save her life today. I will manipulate the lattice to validate her sovereignty. She will rule long and peacefully. But in exchange, you must agree to a total memory erasure of your relationship, and you must leave Vera tonight. Jace stared at him. You want to wipe me out? I want to restore order, Kaylin said. We will leave you the memory of the rescue, the heroic version. You will go back to Earth a hero. She will remain here a queen. She will not remember loving you. She will not mourn you. She will simply be efficient. It was a perfect offer. Saralith lives. Jace walks away clean. No pain, no grief. Just a clean slate and a living queen. Jace looked at the server banks, the humming heart of the Empire. He thought about Saralith in the station whispering, "Be mine." If I agree, Jace said slowly, she becomes a puppet. She becomes exactly what you want, a cold, unfeeling administrator. She becomes safe, Kaylin countered. Is that not what you want? You saved her life once. Save it again. Jace laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. I saved her life so she could live it, Jace said. Not so she could be a component in your machine. He stepped into Kaylin's personal space. Love without integrity isn't love, Kaylin. It's just another form of betrayal. If I erase myself to save her, I'm stealing her choice. I'm doing exactly what you did 10 years ago. You are choosing her death, Kaylin warned. I am choosing her freedom, Jace said. And I'm betting on her strength. She's stronger than you think. And she's definitely stronger than a glorified calculator like you. Jace turned his back on the High Custodian. Don't touch the feed. Jace threw over his shoulder. If you tamper with the trial, I will come back down here and I will dismantle you, bolt by bolt. Jace found Saralith in the preparation chamber. She was dressed in a gown of woven fiber optics, white and blindingly bright. Her skin was pale, and her hands were trembling. You look like you're going to a funeral, Jace said, walking in. Maybe I am, she whispered. She looked up at him. Tull says you have been practicing. I'm pretty sure I know how to order a sausage now. Jace smiled weakly. Saralith didn't smile back. She crossed the room and took his face in her hands. Jace, if I start to slip, if the lattice takes me to... Do not try to pull me out. What? Jace frowned. Tull said my job is to anchor you. If you pull me out before the rite is complete, the feedback will jump to you, she said urgently. It will fry your neural interface. It will kill you instantly. Promise me. If I fall, you let me go. No, Jace said immediately. Jace, she shook him. I am serious. I will not trade your life for my crown. And I won't trade your soul for my safety, Jace argued, pulling her hands away but holding them tight. I just had a conversation with your head tech priest. He offered me a way out. He offered to wipe our memories to keep you safe. Saralith's eyes widened. And you refused? Of course I refused, Jace shouted. We are doing this the hard way. Saralith, the honest way. We survive the truth together, or we don't survive at all. I am not letting you go. Not to the lattice, not to the priesthood, and not to the dark. Sarilith stared at him. The fear in her eyes slowly transmuted into something else. Awe, perhaps, or a love so terrifying it looked like pain. You are a fool, she whispered. I'm your fool, Jace said. A gong sounded from the hallway. It was time. The chamber of the lattice was not a room. It was the inside of a giant mind. The walls were made of crystalline nerves that stretched up into a darkness that seemed to go on forever. In the center was a platform suspended over a pit of roiling liquid light, the raw data stream of the Empire. Thousands of spectators filled the floating galleries above. The entire court was there. The cameras were broadcasting to billions. Sarilith walked onto the platform. Jace stood 3 paces behind her. She raised her arms. I am Sarilith of Vera, she cried out. I opened the door. The cables descended from the ceiling, thick, writhing snake-like conduits glowing with blue energy. They locked into the ports on her spine and the nodes at her temples. Sarilith gasped, her back arching as the connection slammed home. The room went dark. Then, the air exploded with light. Memories flooded the chamber, not on screens but in the air itself. Holographic, solid, real. The audience saw the moon lab. They saw the fire. They felt the heat. They saw a young Jace kicking down the door. Do you remember what you did for me? The crowd saw the truth. They saw the separatists. They heard the order to burn the colony. They felt Sarilith's terror and Jace's impossible choice. A collective gasp went through the galleries. The lie of the human taint was shattering against the brutal reality of the rescue. Then, the scene shifted. The station, the zero-G shaft, the intimacy, the kiss. The priesthood began to chant. A low, dissonant hum designed to disrupt concentration. Impure, impure, impure. The memories flickered. The image of Jace holding Sarilith distorted, turning into a monster, then back to a man. The lattice was confused. The priesthood was using sonic jammers to introduce a frequency of doubt. Sarilith screamed. The light in the cables turned from blue to angry red. She is losing synchronization, Till shouted from the sidelines. The interference is too strong. Jace saw Sarilith fall to her knees. Smoke was rising from the interface ports on her shoulders. She was burning. Let me go, she had said. Jace looked at the priesthood, chanting their hate. He looked at Kalen, watching impassively from his box. To hell with protocol. Jace ran. He crossed the distance in 2 strides. He didn't try to pull the cables out. Instead, he grabbed Sarilith's hand. He jammed his own neural interface, the military-grade port behind his ear, against the exposed contact node on her neck. He bridged the connection. The shock hit him like a freight train. White agony. He felt his teeth rattle. He felt her mind pouring into his. Fear, pain, love, so much love. He gritted his teeth, blood trickling from his nose. Claverenthal Orus, Jace roared, his voice cracking over the sound of the energy storm. I stand as witness to the soul. He wasn't just speaking the words, he was broadcasting them. By linking with her, he had entered the projection. The audience saw it. They didn't just see Sarilith's memory anymore, they saw Jace's. They saw Sarilith through Jace's eyes. They saw her not as a queen, but as the bravest woman he had ever known. They felt his awe of her. They felt the 10 years of longing. They felt the absolute, unshakable truth that he did not want to rule them, he just wanted her to be safe. It washed over the priesthood like a tidal wave. The chanting stopped. The hate couldn't survive the purity of that emotion. It was too raw, too human, too real. Sarilith gasped, drawing strength from him. The red light faded, returning to a brilliant, blinding gold. She stood up, pulling Jace with her. We are here, she projected, her voice booming in a million minds. We are true. The climax hit. A shockwave of pure empathy blasted outward from the dais, knocking the High Vicar to his knees. The treaty block members wept without knowing why. Then, silence. The cables retracted with a hiss. Saralith collapsed. Jace caught her. He fell to the floor, cradling her head. His vision was swimming, his body numb. Saralith? He croaked. The court was silent. Everyone was watching. The priesthood was broken. The truth had won. But the cost looked fatal. Saralith's eyes fluttered open. They were no longer glowing. They were gray, soft, and very tired. She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched the blood on Jace's lip. She didn't speak to the court. She didn't speak to the cameras. She spoke only to him. "If you stay," she whispered, her voice rough with smoke and tears. "You accept the storm with me." Jace looked down at her. He looked at the stunned galaxy watching them. He looked at the chaos they had caused and the peace they might have just bought. "I like the rain," Jace said. He kissed her forehead, and the roar of the crowd finally belatedly began. The chamber of the lattice did not go dark when the rite concluded. Instead, it was washed in a cold, unforgiving gray light. The euphoric connection that had united the court moments ago, the shared experience of Jace and Saralith's love, began to recede, leaving behind the hard sediment of the final data packet. The lattice, in its absolute commitment to truth, had not stopped with the rescue. It had played the aftermath. Above the dais, the lingering holographic particles coalesced into a map of the Moon Lab sector. It showed the shuttle escaping. It showed the red icon of the Separatist base. And then, it showed the retaliatory strike. 12,000 lights blinked out on the map. 12,000 colonists vaporized by the Separatists because the asset, Saralith, had been removed. The silence in the hall was no longer stunned. It was horrified. The narrative of the hero saving the princess had a butcher's bill attached to it. Jace stood up. His head was pounding from the neural feedback, blood still drying on his lip. But his mind was clear. He felt the shift in the room. The priesthood was already exchanging looks of vindication. The treaty block looked sick. He could have stayed silent. He could have let Saralith use her royal authority to dismiss the casualties as the cost of war. But he looked at the map, and he looked at the people, and he walked to the edge of the dais. "Turn it off," Saralith whispered, reaching for his arm. "You do not have to answer for this." "Yes, I do," Jace said. He tapped his lapel communicator, linking it to the room's audio. "Look at the map," Jace commanded. His voice was rough, stripping away the polish of the diplomatic court. He pointed to the empty space where the colony had been. "For 10 years, you have been told a story about a hero who defied orders to save a queen. You wanted a fairy tale. You wanted to believe that doing the right thing is clean, that it feels good." He scanned the faces of the purity priesthood, who stared back with golden masks of judgment. "It is not clean," Jace said. "I made a choice. I chose one life over 12,000. I did it because I could not watch her die. I did it because I was selfish and scared and human, and 12,000 people paid for that choice with their lives." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was not the speech of a politician. It was a confession. "The custodians edited my memory because they thought you couldn't handle a hero with blood on his hands," Jace continued. "They wanted you to have a statue. But statues don't bleed, and they don't lead." He looked at Saralith, then back to the Empire. "Courage is not doing the right thing and walking away into the sunset. Courage is making the impossible choice, accepting the damage you didn't intend, and staying to fix it. I am not a hero. I am a man with a debt, and I am here to pay it, not by hiding, but by ensuring that a war like that never happens again." He stepped back. The silence hung heavy, swaying between condemnation and understanding. Then Sarilith stepped forward. She did not look at the map. She looked at her people. "We have been ruled by a comfortable lie," she declared, her voice ringing with the steel of the throne. "You felt my heart during the rite. You know I did not order that massacre, but I benefited from it. I survived because of it." She took Jace's hand, lacing her fingers through his in plain view of the cameras. "Leadership without truth is just elegant tyranny," she said. "If you want a queen who is perfect, you can have the lies. If you want a queen who is real, you must accept the ghosts that stand beside her. I choose the ghosts. I choose the truth, and I choose him." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, a single member of the treaty bloc, a young delegate from an outer system, began to clap. It was slow, hesitant. Then another joined. Then the royal guard slammed their spear butts against the floor in a rhythmic thunder of approval. The treaty bloc began to splinter. Half of them moved toward the dais, signaling support. The other half retreated toward the priesthood, their faces twisted in fear and opportunism. But the moment of reconciliation was shattered by a sound that felt like the planet itself cracking open. The lights in the chamber turned a sick, pulsating violet. The gravity generators whined and reversed, throwing the spectators in the upper galleries to the floor. The lattice screamed. It was not a sound of audio. It was a psychic shriek that tore through the neural interfaces of everyone in the room. Sarilith doubled over, clutching her head. "They are overriding the core," she gasped. "It is Kaelin." The huge holographic map turned red, the exit sealed with the slam of heavy blast doors. The automated defense turrets in the ceiling deployed, their targeting lasers sweeping the room. "Citizens of Vera." A synthesized voice boomed from the walls. It was Kaelin, the High Custodian. "The Queen has been compromised by emotional instability. The Lattice has initiated the preservation protocol. The biological leadership is hereby suspended. A coup, and not a political one, a mechanical one. We have to move," Jace roared, grabbing Sarilith as a laser bolt scorched the floor where they had been standing. The room erupted into chaos. The priesthood and their allies were rushing toward the service exits, which opened for them. Kaelin was letting his conspirators go. The loyalists were trapped in the kill box. "Tull!" Jace shouted into his comms. "Where are you?" "I am currently hiding under a table that is distinctly not bulletproof," Tull screamed back. "The building is eating us. Envoy, the corridors are reconfiguring. Get to the maintenance lift in the north quadrant," Jace ordered. "We are coming to you." Jace and Sarilith sprinted off the dais. A squad of royal guards, loyal to the end, formed a phalanx around them. "To the core room," the guard captain shouted. "We must manually sever the custodian link." They pushed into the hallway, but the hallway was wrong. The bioorganic architecture of the palace, usually static, was moving. The walls rippled like intestinal muscle. The floor undulated, the ceiling was lowering, trying to crush them. "It's alive," Jace muttered, firing his kinetic pistol at a sensory node on the wall. The wall shuddered and retracted, oozing blue fluid. Sarilith, eyes glowing with the violet reflection of the corrupted system, shouted, "I can feel it. Kaelin is using a bio-coded override. He is hurting the building to make it hurt us." "Can you stop it?" Jace asked, kicking open a jammed door. "I can fight it," she said through gritted teeth, "but I have to go deeper." She closed her eyes. The nodes at her temples flared. The corridor stopped shrinking. The floor stabilized. She was wrestling the skyscraper with her mind. Keep moving. She strained. I cannot hold it forever. They fought their way through the living labyrinth. Every 50 meters was a battle. Automated cleaning drones, repurposed as suicide bombers, threw themselves at the guards. Corridors dead-ended into solid walls, forcing them to backtrack. They found Tull near the North Quadrant lift. The lanky alien was frantically typing on a datapad while fending off a vacuum bot with a shoe. You took your time, Tull shrieked. I have been assaulted by a floor polisher. Can you open the lift? Jace asked, ignoring the complaint. The lift is sealed by a moral imperative lock, Tull said, his fingers flying across the screen. Kalen has programmed the security grid with priesthood scripture. It demands a recitation of the 17 virtues of obedience before it will open the door. We don't have time to pray, Jace yelled as plasma fire erupted from the corridor behind them. The custodian guard, humanoid cyborgs in heavy armor, had caught up. Cover fire, Jace ordered the remaining royal guards. I am not praying, Tull snapped. I am improvising. Tull tapped a final command. The lift doors chimed politely and slid open. How did you do that? Saralith asked, stumbling inside as the team piled in. I rerouted the sanctimonious subroutine into a loop of its own speeches, Tull said smugly as the doors sealed. The AI is currently too busy arguing with itself about the definition of obedience to realize I told it to open the door. It is the bureaucratic equivalent of a stroke. Brilliant, Jace said, checking his ammo. He had 2 clips left. The lift shot downward, not toward the exit, but toward the heart of the machine. The core room. This ends now, Saralith said. She was leaning against the wall, sweat soaking her ceremonial gown. Her connection to the tortured building was draining her life force. Her nose was bleeding again. You're burning out, Jace said, wiping the blood from her face. I am fine, she lied. You're a terrible liar, Jace said. That's why I like you. The lift crashed to a halt. The doors opened onto the core room. It was a cavern of suspended light. In the center, a massive column of crystalline data pulsed with a rhythmic, sickly beat. Standing on the gantry surrounding the core was Kalen, flanked by a dozen heavy combat cyborgs and the High Vicar of the priesthood. The High Vicar looked less confident now that he was surrounded by whirring machinery. The Queen arrives, Kalen announced. His voice came from everywhere, to witness the dawn of true order. He raised a hand. The cyborgs raised their weapons. Jace didn't wait for a monologue. Go! He shouted. The action was instant and brutal. Jace slid across the polished floor, firing his pistol. 2 cyborgs went down, sparks flying from their chest plates. The royal guards engaged the others in hand-to-hand combat, energy pikes clashing against titanium limbs. Saralith didn't run for cover. She walked straight toward the core. Kalen, she shouted. Her voice was amplified by her own power, shaking the gantry. Get out of my mind. She threw out a hand. A blast of telekinetic force, fueled by her rage, slammed into the phalanx of cyborgs, knocking them backward like bowling pins. Kalen pressed a command on his wrist unit. The core flared. A bolt of red lightning arced from the crystal, striking Saralith. She screamed, dropping to one knee. He is using the lattice to fry her nervous system, Tull shouted from behind a console he was trying to hack. Jace saw her fall. The world narrowed to a single point. He abandoned his cover. He abandoned tactics. He sprinted across the open ground, bullets and plasma bolts whizzing past him. He reached Saralith just as Kalen prepared a second strike. Get up! Jace yelled, grabbing her harness. I can't. Saralith gasped. It's too heavy. Jace looked up. Kalen was aiming the core's discharge directly at them. There was no time to dodge, no time to shield. Jace spun around, placing his body over hers. The bolt struck. It wasn't electricity. It was pure neural agony made physical. It hit Jace's back like a sledgehammer of fire. His combat armor absorbed the initial heat, but the psionic backlash tore through him. He felt his ribs crack. He felt his lungs seize. He screamed, but he didn't let go. He held her down, shielding her from the light. "Jace!" Saralith shrieked. The discharge ended. Jace slumped forward, his weight dead on top of her. Saralith scrambled out from under him. He was breathing, but it was ragged, wet, bubbling sounds coming from his chest. His armor was smoking. "You!" Jace wheezed, grinning through blood-stained teeth. "You take too long to get up." Something broke inside the Queen of Vera. She looked at Kaelin, who was preparing a third strike. She looked at the High Vicar, who was cowering behind a pillar. The fear vanished. The political calculation vanished. The desire for peace vanished. All that was left was the storm. She stood up. The air around her ignited. The bioluminescent plants in the decorative alcoves withered and died as she drew every ounce of energy from the room. Her eyes went white, not the soft white of the right, but the blinding, terrifying white of a supernova. "Enough," she whispered. She didn't gesture. She didn't shout. She simply screamed with her mind. The blast wave was invisible, but the effects were cataclysmic. The heavy cyborgs were lifted into the air and crushed into balls of scrap metal by gravity that had increased 100-fold in localized pockets. The glass gantry shattered. Kaelin was thrown against the core itself. He was pinned there, held by a telekinetic grip that was crushing his synthetic components. Sparks flew from his joints. Saralith walked up the steps of the shattered gantry. She walked on the air itself, held aloft by her power. She hovered in front of Kaelin. "You wanted a weapon?" she asked, her voice distorted, sounding like a legion of ghosts. "Here I am." She raised her hand, her fingers curled into a claw. Kaelin's chest plate began to buckle. The organic half of his face turned purple. She was going to pop him like a grape. "Die!" she hissed. "Majesty, no!" The voice was weak. It came from the floor. Saralith froze. She looked down. Jace was trying to push himself up. He collapsed again, coughing blood. "Don't." Jace gasped. "Don't be what they say you are." Saralith looked at her lover, broken on the floor. She looked at the enemy in her grip. If she killed Kaelin in anger, she proved the priesthood right. She proved she was unstable. She proved that power was just violence in a pretty dress. She closed her eyes. The blinding white light faded. She lowered her hand. Kaelin fell to the deck, gasping, his machinery whining in protest. Saralith descended, landing softly beside Jace. She knelt, her hands glowing with a soft, healing blue light as she placed them on his chest. "Tell," she barked, the command sharp and clear. "Secure the traitor. If he moves, delete his operating system." Tull scrambled up the wreckage, holding a pistol he clearly didn't know how to use, and pointed it at Kaelin. "Do not twitch," Tull warned. "I have very shaky hands and a deep resentment for your filing system." The royal guards, those who were left, surged forward to arrest the remaining conspirators. The High Vicar was found trying to hide inside a ventilation duct. He was dragged out by his robes, his golden mask falling off to reveal a sweating, terrified old man. Saralith didn't watch them. She was focused entirely on Jace. "Stay with me," she commanded, her voice breaking. "That is a royal order. Envoy." Jace looked up at her. The pain was fading, replaced by a cold numbness that was creeping up his legs. "I think I might have violated a few more protocols," he whispered. "Be quiet," she sobbed, pouring her energy into him, knitting bone and staunching bleeding. "You reckless, stupid, wonderful idiot. The sounds of battle died away. The core hummed quietly, returning to a stable blue. The coup was broken. The palace was secure. But on the floor of the core room, the victory felt hollow. Sarilith held Jace as the medics arrived, their hover stretchers flashing with urgency. "He saved me," Sarilith told the lead medic, her hands stained with his blood. "If he dies, the Empire dies with him. Do you understand?" "We understand, Majesty," the medic said. Terrified, they loaded him onto the stretcher. Sarilith stood up, her legs shaking. She looked at Toll. "The summit?" she asked. "It begins in 4 hours," Toll said, looking at his wrist comp. "The delegates are already arriving in orbit. They have seen the broadcast. They know about the coup. They are waiting to see if you are alive." Sarilith wiped the blood from her hands onto her ruined gown. She looked at the prisoner, Kalen, who was being led away in magnetic cuffs. "Let them wait," she said. "I have to go change." 3 hours later, the Imperial Infirmary was quiet. Jace lay in a biobed, immersed in a tank of regenerative gel. He was unconscious, but the monitors showed a steady, strong heartbeat. Sarilith stood by the glass, watching him. She was dressed for the summit, not in the armor of a warrior, nor the silks of a princess. She wore a suit of simple, stark white, adorned only with the crest of Vera. It was the uniform of a statesman. Tull stood beside her. "He will recover," Tull said quietly. "Humans are annoyingly resilient. It is their cockroach DNA." "He isn't a cockroach." "Tull," Sarilith said, though she smiled faintly. "He took a plasma bolt for the crown." Tull admitted, "I suppose that elevates him to, perhaps, a very brave hamster." Sarilith placed her hand on the glass. "He reframed the narrative," she said. "He made them see the cost. Now I have to make them pay it." She turned away from the tank. "Is the console ready?" "Yes, Majesty, the priesthood has been suspended and the treaty block is in disarray. The floor is yours." Sarilith walked to the door. She paused, looking back at Jace one last time. "Sleep well, my love," she whispered. "When you wake up, I promise the world will be different." She walked out. The Peace Summit was held in the Great Hall. Delegates from 100 worlds sat in the amphitheater. They were silent as Sarilith approached the podium. She didn't have a prepared speech. She didn't have a teleprompter. She placed the satchel on the podium. She opened it and took out the Treaty of Oru. "You came here to sign a peace," Sarilith said, her voice projecting clearly without the aid of the lattice. "You thought you were signing a treaty with a weak queen and a desperate empire." She looked at the delegates. "You were wrong." She held up the book. "Today, we do not just sign a peace, we sign a promise that memory is sacred, a promise that history cannot be edited to suit the powerful." She signaled Tull. On the massive screens behind her, the footage of the rescue played, not the sanitized version, the real one, the fire, the fear, the death. "This is the cost of your previous wars," Sarilith said. "We hid it. We polished it. And because we hid it, we almost destroyed ourselves." She laid her hand on the treaty. "I am proposing a new clause, the anti-manipulation protocol. Any government found altering the historical record, biological or digital, will be expelled from the conquered and subject to immediate embargo. We will build our peace on the ugly, broken truth, or we will not build it at all." The hall erupted, shouts of protest from the authoritarian regimes, nods of slow, serious agreement from the democracies. Sarilith waited. She stood tall, unmoving, a lighthouse in the storm. She wasn't just a queen anymore. She was the woman who had walked through hell with a human soldier and come out the other side. She was untouchable. Let them shout, she thought. I have faced the lattice. I have faced the fire. She looked at the empty chair where the Earth envoy should have sat. If you stay, you accept the storm with me. She smiled. Let it rain. The silence in the royal suite was louder than the bombardment had been. Sarilith stood before a mirror made of polished obsidian, looking at a reflection she barely recognized. The woman in the glass looked hollowed out. Her skin was pale, translucent enough to show the faint blue tracery of the veins beneath. And her eyes, usually the molten starlight that commanded an empire, were dull, rimmed with the red fatigue of a soul that had burned too much fuel to keep the engine running. The coup was broken. Kaelin was in chains. The lattice was stable. But the cost was sitting in a medical tank 3 floors down, and the bill was due in the Great Hall in less than 2 hours. Minister Vane, the remnants of the treaty bloc, and the shaken delegates from a dozen star systems were waiting. They smelled blood. The official report said the Queen had suffered a neural event. The rumors said she was broken, that her human lover had destabilized the government, and that Vera was a wounded animal ready to be carved up by the wolves of the galactic market. She had a choice. She could retreat. She could cite medical necessity, delay the summit, and let the Regency Council handle the negotiations. It would be safe. It would preserve her dignity. It would also mean admitting that Kaelin was right, that emotion was a liability, and that she was too fragile to rule without a handler. Or she could go down there, exposed, weakened, with nothing but the truth in her hands. A chime at the door broke her concentration. "Enter," she said. It was Tull. The aide looked disheveled. One of his ceremonial epaulets was hanging by a thread, and he had a smudge of hydraulic fluid on his cheek. "The medical team reports that Envoy Rourke has regained consciousness," Tull said, his voice unusually soft. "Is he?" Sarilith started, then stopped. She needed to be precise. "Is he coherent?" "He is currently arguing with a med drone about the nutritional value of gelatin," Tull said. "I believe he threatened to dismantle it if it tried to insert another feeding tube. So yes, he is entirely himself." Sarilith let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 10 years. "Thank you." Tull. Tull did not leave. He stood by the door, wringing his long slate-colored hands. "Majesty," the aide said, "the security assessment for the summit is unfavorable. The priesthood has mobilized a protest outside the hall. They are chanting about the human corruption. If you go down there, they will try to tear you apart, not with weapons, but with words. They will use him against you." "Let them try," Sarilith said. She turned back to the mirror. She reached up and unpinned the heavy jeweled headpiece that signified her divine right to rule. She set it on the table with a heavy thud. Then she unclasped the high collar of her stiff, ceremonial armor. "Majesty," Tull asked, alarmed. "You are disrobing?" "I am undressing." "Tull," she corrected. "There is a difference. I am not going down there as a deity wrapped in gold. I am going as a woman who survived a war." She smoothed the simple white suit she wore beneath the armor. It was stark, unadorned, and terrifyingly human in its simplicity. "Take me to the infirmary," she ordered. "I have one stop to make before the wolves get their meal." The Imperial Infirmary smelled of antiseptic ozone and synthesized lavender. It was a cold, efficient place, usually silent, but today it was filled with the low, buzzing complaints of Jace Rourke. Jace was sitting up in the biobed, his chest wrapped in regenerative bandages that glowed with a faint orange light. He looked terrible. His face was bruised, his lip was split, and he moved with the stiffness of a man whose skeleton had been briefly reorganized by high-voltage psionic lightning. A floating medical drone hovered near his head, flashing a red warning light. "Patient Rourke, please recline," the drone chirped. "Your spinal integrity is currently rated at 60%. Motion is inadvisable." "My spinal integrity is fine," Jace rasped. "It's my patience that's at 0%. Tull cleared his throat from the doorway. "If you abuse the medical equipment, Envoy, I will have them switch your pain management to the suppository setting." Jace froze. He looked at Tull, then at Sarilith standing behind him. A grin, crooked and painful and devastatingly familiar, broke across his face. "Threatening the wounded," Jace said. "Is that Varen hospitality? It is Varen efficiency." Tull sniffed. "I will leave you. The drone and I have to discuss the definition of bed rest." Tull ushered the protesting drone out of the room, the door sliding shut with a hiss that sealed the world away. Sarilith stood at the foot of the bed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other, measuring the damage, cataloging the survival. "You look like hell," Jace said softly. "You are one to talk," she replied, moving to the side of the bed. Her hand hovered over his arm, afraid to touch, afraid to hurt. "You took a direct discharge from the core. The doctor said you should be dead." "I have a hard head," Jace said, "and I had a good reason to stay awake." Sarilith sat on the edge of the mattress. The distance between Queen and Envoy, between Sovereign and Spy, had evaporated in the fire of the core room. There was nothing left but the raw, unvarnished truth of two people who had bled for each other. She reached out and took his hand. His skin was rough, calloused, warm. "I have to go to the summit," she whispered. "I know," Jace said. "I am scared." Jace, it was an admission she would never make to a general, a minister, or even Tull. But she made it to him. Jace squeezed her hand. His grip was weak, but it was there. "Good," he said. "If you weren't scared, you'd be dangerous. Fear keeps you honest." Sarilith looked down at their joined hands. "Do you remember what I asked you?" she said. "In the throne room? When you first arrived? Human. Do you still remember what you did for me?" Jace quoted. "I didn't just mean the rescue," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't just mean pulling me out of the fire." She looked up, her eyes searching his face. "For 10 years. Jace, I have been a symbol. I have been the crown, the divine vessel, the survivor, the victim, the leader. Everyone who looks at me sees something they can use, or worship, or fear. Even Tull sees the monarchy first and the woman second." She leaned closer, her forehead resting against his shoulder. "But when you looked at me in that lab, when you looked at me in the station, and when you looked at me in the core room, you didn't see a queen. You saw Sarilith. You saw the terrified girl who didn't want to die. You saw the woman who likes the rain." She let out a sob, a small, fractured sound. "I asked if you remembered what you did for me. You saw me as a person. Jace, before I became a statue, you are the only one who ever has. That is what you did. That is what saved me. Not the extraction. The recognition." Jace moved his hand up to cup her cheek. He brushed away a tear with his thumb. "I never saw a statue," he said. "I just saw the only thing in the galaxy worth fighting for." Sarilith closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, drawing strength from him like a battery. "I have to go," she whispered. "I know," he said again. She stood up. She smoothed her white suit. She put the mask of command back on. But this time, it was thinner. It was transparent. "Will you be here when I get back?" she asked. "I'm not going anywhere," Jace said, tapping the side of the bed. I have a date with a drone and some nutritional gelatin. Saralith smiled. It was a real smile, reaching her eyes. Then I will make it quick. The great hall was a cauldron of noise. The delegates were shouting over one another. The treaty bloc was trying to maintain order, but the priesthood agitators in the gallery were drowning them out with rhythmic chanting. Purify the crown, purify the crown. When the doors opened, the noise didn't stop. It wasn't the respectful silence of her first entrance. It was a challenge. Saralith walked to the central podium alone. No guards, no tool, just her, in her white suit, carrying a simple leather satchel. She stood at the lectern and waited. She didn't amplify her voice. She just waited. Slowly, curiosity overcame hostility. The chanting died down. The shouting faded. Saralith opened the satchel. She took out the reel-to-reel tapes from the Station 9 archive. She placed them on the desk. Then she looked up. "You have heard the rumors," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. "You have heard that your queen is compromised, that she has fallen under the influence of a human spy, that she is mentally unstable." She paused. "You have heard half the truth." A murmur ran through the hall. "I am compromised," Saralith declared. "I am compromised by the fact that I am alive. And I am alive because of the actions of one man who refused to let history be written by the convenient math of war." She tapped the tapes. "This is the unedited archive of the Moon Lab incident. I am entering it into the public record today. It contains the proof of the separatist attack. It contains the proof of the retaliatory strike that killed 12,000 colonists. And it contains the proof that for 10 years, the Lattice custodians have been editing the minds of key witnesses to erase that tragedy." She looked at the delegate from the Earth Coalition. "We have been building a peace on a foundation of sand. We erased the pain because it was politically expedient. But pain is the only thing that teaches us not to touch the fire again." Minister Vane stood up, his face red. "Majesty, this is irregular. We are here to sign the Concord, not to debate ancient history. We are here to sign a truth." Saralith snapped. She brought up a holographic document. "I am proposing a new article for the Panstellar Concord, the Cognitive Sovereignty Clause. It bans the use of memory-altering technology on any sentient being, for any reason, across all signatory worlds. It makes the truth, no matter how ugly, a fundamental right." The hall erupted. This was huge. It would dismantle intelligence agencies, overturn court verdicts, and bankrupt the tech firms that specialized in trauma editing. A voice cut through the din. It was a high priest, a successor to the disgraced vicar, standing in the gallery. "And what of the truth of your own bed?" "Majesty!" the priest shouted, his voice dripping with venom. "You speak of high morals, yet you stand there tainted by the touch of a human mercenary. You admit to an illicit affair with a species that has no soul. Is this the truth you wish to codify? That our queen is a slave to her own base desires?" The room went deadly silent. It was a direct personal attack, designed to humiliate her into retreat. Saralith looked up at the priest. She didn't flinch. "You call it taint," she said, her voice rising, filling the hall. "You call it weakness. You believe that love is a corruption because it cannot be controlled by your rituals or your algorithms." She stepped out from behind the podium, exposing herself fully to the crowd. "Yes, I love him," she said. The confession hit the room like a shockwave. "I love him not because he is a human, but because when the entire galaxy told him to let me die to save a statistic, he said no. I love him because he carries the guilt of that choice every single day, and he does not hide from it. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the delegates. You say love is a weakness? I say it is the only reason I am standing here. It is the only reason Kaylin is in a cell and not sitting on this throne. Love is not corruption. Love is the force that demands we be better than our programming. It is the force that strengthens truth and compassion when logic demands a massacre. She pointed at the priest. If that makes me weak in the eyes of your dead gods, then I pity you, because you will never know the strength of having someone stand beside you in the storm. As if summoned by the words, the doors at the back of the hall hissed open. The sound of a cane tapping against the floor echoed in the silence. Tap. Step. Tap. Step. Heads turned. Jace Rourke walked into the great hall. He was wearing his dress uniform, hastily cleaned but still bearing the scorch marks of the core discharge. He leaned heavily on a cane Tull must have found for him. He was pale, sweating, and clearly in agony with every step. But his head was up. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at Sarilith. He walked down the central aisle, the sea of delegates parting for him. He wasn't marching as a soldier. He was walking as a man coming home. He reached the bottom of the dais. He stopped. He looked up at her. He didn't bow. He climbed the steps, slow and painful. When he reached the top, he didn't stand behind her, as a guard would. He didn't stand in front of her, as a shield would. He stood beside her. He turned to face the room. He looked at the priest, then at the delegates. I am Jace Rourke, he said, his voice raspy but steady. I am the man who saved her, and I am the man who loves her. And if you have a problem with that, you can file a complaint with the Lattice. I believe the current wait time for a response is infinity. A ripple of laughter, nervous, shocked, but genuine, went through the room. The tension broke. The humiliation tactic had failed because they refused to be humiliated. Minister Vane sat down slowly, realizing the tide had turned. Now, Sarilith said, returning to the podium. About that treaty. She was about to call for the vote when Tull's voice chimed in her earpiece. Majesty. The financial trace is complete. Sarilith paused. She looked at Jace. He gave a microscopic nod. One final matter, Sarilith said. She signaled the screens again. A complex web of financial transactions appeared. We wondered who paid for the memory edits, she said. We wondered who funded Kaylin's coup. It was expensive work. It required resources beyond the custodian's budget. The web highlighted a logo, a stylized gear and sword, the Ethelgard Consortium. Sarilith named them, a conglomerate of arms manufacturers and terraforming guilds. A group of delegates in the back, representatives of the consortium, suddenly looked very interested in the exits. You funded the erasure of the massacre because war is profitable, Sarilith said coldly. You wanted the conflict to simmer. You wanted a queen who was unstable, a peace that was fragile. You bet against peace. She tapped a key on the console. I have just authorized the Imperial Treasury to seize all assets of the Ethelgard Consortium within Varen space. Your shipyards, your banks, your factories. They are now the property of the Crown. The consortium delegates jumped up, shouting about international law. It is perfectly legal, Sarilith said, her voice like ice. Under the War Profiteering Act of the Third Era, you declared war on my mind. I am simply collecting reparations. She looked at the rest of the room. We will use those funds to rebuild the colony we destroyed 10 years ago. We will use them to pay the families of the dead. She leaned forward. Now, who is ready to sign? The signing took 3 hours. It was done with unprecedented transparency. Every signature was recorded by the Lattice and broadcast to the public. There were no backroom deals, no secret clauses. The cognitive sovereignty clause became law in 40 systems. The Ethelgard consortium was bankrupt before the sun set. When the final signature was cast, the hall erupted in applause. It wasn't the polite applause of diplomacy. It was the relief of a galaxy that had stepped back from the brink. Sarilith didn't stay for the reception. She left the handshaking to Minister Vane, who was suddenly very eager to take credit for the new era of peace. She took Jace's arm, and together, they walked out of the hall, leaving the noise of history behind them. The private observation deck was quiet. It was the highest point in the palace, a glass bubble suspended among the spires, overlooking the city. The Aurora fields were back to their calm, jade green. The city pulsed with its gentle heartbeat rhythm. It was a beautiful night. Sarilith stood by the glass, looking out. Jace sat on a bench nearby, his cane resting against his knee. He was exhausted, his face gray, but his eyes were bright. "We did it," Sarilith said softly. "You did it," Jace corrected. "I just stood there and tried not to fall over." "You stood there." Sarilith turned to him. That was the hard part. She walked over to him. She sat beside him. She reached out and touched the bandage on his chest, right over his heart. "They are calling it the romance of the century on the news feeds," she said with a dry smile. "Tull is already receiving licensing requests for action figures. I want a cut of the profits," Jace said. "And I want my figure to have better hair than Tull." They laughed. It was a quiet, intimate sound. Then the silence returned, but it wasn't heavy. It was comfortable. It was the silence of two people who no longer needed to hide anything. Sarilith looked at him. The moonlight caught the silver in her hair and the gray in his. They were older. They were scarred. They were tired. But they were here. "Human," she whispered, the words drifting into the space between them. Jace looked at her. He knew the line. He knew the weight of it. "Do you still remember what you did for me?" she asked, almost smiling this time, her eyes shining with tears. Jace thought about the moon lab. He thought about the fire. He thought about the colony. He thought about the lattice and the pain and the way she had looked when she stood in front of the galaxy and claimed him. "I remember," he said softly. He reached out and took her hand, interlacing their fingers. "I remember the cost. I remember the miracle. And I remember the woman who became a queen without losing her heart." Sarilith leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't the desperate kiss of the station, nor the tragic kiss of the core. It was a promise. "We have a lot of work to do," she whispered against his lips. "The priesthood will regroup. The consortium will sue. The peace is fragile." "I know," Jace said. "Are you ready for the storm?" Jace looked out at the city, then back at the woman who ruled it. "Let it rain," he said. They sat there together as the twin moons of Vera rose over the horizon, casting two shadows that merged into one on the floor of the glass chamber. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were no magic wands to fix the past. There was just work and hard choices and the fragile, stubborn hope of a peace built on truth. But as Jace looked at Sarilith and she looked at him, they both knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't be facing it alone. And that was enough.